This is going to be a short video of how to take an old chessboard and turn it into a small end table by using some real basic techniques, as well as anything that you can get at your local hardware store. So we're just making a small end table. It's got 4 legs, a nice sturdy piece. You can make the top of the chessboard yourself if you don't have one. That's fairly easy. And everything is anything you could get at your local hardware store, or you could buy it online if you really wanted to. But it's pretty simple. It's pretty easy. It's a nice weekend project, and I think it turns out pretty well. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's get to it. Alright, so here we have the basic template of the leg here. So in order to match this up, these are actually going to sit, there's the bottom. This is a cardboard, but there's actually wood behind it, so it shouldn't be an issue. These are going to sit at the angles of each of the corners here, and they're all going to meet into the middle. I chose to take it all the way out to the bottom of the table here. You could put your legs, you could make them smaller so they actually sit inside. If I did it again, it actually looks a little better that way. I think I'd probably redo it that way. So these are all going to sit inside, and they're all going to meet square with each other. To attach them, just using some basic 90-degree brackets. Decorative brackets you can get at Lowe's. They're $3 a pop. You could buy them on Amazon as well. As far as dimensions go, the total height I've got is end to end 20 inches. This is your basic cheap pine that you can buy at any local hardware store. This is listed as 10 inches. The actual measurement is 9 1/4. From end to end here is 7 5/8, and the small end here is 3 inches. Once you have this measurement and this measurement, you can make your angle that way. You can make them any size you want. It doesn't matter too much. Now you can use a simple jigsaw to cut these out. I keep the back end square. That's the factory end, and then basically cut around. I would use a blade that's you're making all straight cuts. There's no curves, so you can use a nice thick blade there, as opposed to a smaller blade that would be good at going around angles. You can see the difference there. So I would use just a straight cut blade, and then use a 60 grit sandpaper, sand all your edges down, and then I used a 120 grit, and then finish it off with 220 grit. That's kind of my standard for sanding anything down to a finish is 60, 120, 220. It gets a nice finish on it. So if you have all of your edges cut straight and you're happy with at least one of these, so you could cut out all 4, and then you have to work down all 4 edges, and that could be time consuming. What I ended up doing is I have a router, and so I made one. I made it as perfect as I liked it. All my measurements were good, all my edges were clean, and then I used this one as a template, and then I could attach others around it and router another piece, and you can multiply as many pieces as you want. So I'll show you how I set that up and how that goes. Alright, so now that we have one leg cut, what we're basically going to do is be sticking this leg onto a blank board, tracing around it, taking our jigsaw then and cutting around the outside, staying just far enough away from the line that we've traced. You don't really have to be on that line if you're using a router, because we're going to be using the router to come back and clean up all of those edges. Like I said before, this is just a fast and easy way to do this, to turn one leg into 4, 3, 10, 500 if you want. If you don't have the router, if you don't have the jigsaw, you can do it all. You can do it all with the plain handsaw and sandpaper. There's nothing saying you can't do that. It's going to take you a little longer. So if you have the tools, I say go ahead and use them. But there's nothing to say that you can't go out, buy length of board, use a handsaw, and have the same exact table, same exact result by the time you're done. Save a little time. I'm making 2 of them, so I will be using the router. The router I'll be using, it's the DeWalt 618. I like this router. It's functional. It's heavy enough that it's got some weight to it. It's not too heavy. It also has different attachments. You can make it into a plunge router. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. It's perfect for, these kind of at-home jobs, as well as some other jobs too. It's a good router, and it hasn't done me wrong yet. The bit that I'll be using, it's going to be a template bit or a flush bit. It's got a ball bearing here at the bottom, which allows you to run along the edge of the wood without cutting it. So this is going to be the cutting edge. Is going to be in the red, and everything that is on top of this ball bearing as it spins is going to be cut. So what I'll end up doing is putting the template underneath of the board, and then as that ball bearing runs along the bottom, it will be cutting the top and shaping this to make an exact replica of the bottom. Okay, so now we have our template that we made, one perfect one, and we also have 4 rough cuts. So basically what we're going to do is now we're going to take the template and take the rough cut. We're going to attach the template to the bottom of the rough cut. We're going to move around the outside of the template with our template router bit, also called a base cut bit. We're just going to move along the bottom edge and cut any pieces that are hanging out on the top edge, making exact replicas of the legs. Alright, so all the legs are done. I've got about 8 of these now, and they're all sanded down. As mentioned before, what we did was 60 grit, 120, and then 220. Made a nice finished off all the corners. Then I wiped it down with just simple mineral spirits. Throw it on any cloth, wipe it down, it gets all the dust off. The next step is going to be, once those are all dried, I'm going to take some wood stain, and I'm using ebony here. You can choose whatever color you want. I'm choosing a darker color, but you can do whatever you want. And what I use is, you can use a brush to wipe it on, or you could roll it on. I use an old t-shirt. I think it works a little better. You might need more coats because it wipes it pretty thin, but I think it gives a nice even coat, and it's easy to apply and wipe off whenever you need. And lastly, once that stain dries, I'm just going to give it a nice wipe on with this poly finish. It's really easy to use again. I use an old t-shirt. Once everything is dry, you can just wipe it on, wipe off any of the excess, and then you're all finished and you're good to go. Okay, so this is just going to be putting a basic stain on. I went ahead, I put stain on one, and I didn't really like the way that it looked, so I went back and kind of roughed up the wood in a couple spots, made it look a little more distressed and old, maybe to match the chessboard that's going to sit on top. I put some pot marks in it and hit it with some scratched up sandpaper. And I like that looked a little better, but this is the basic. You just take a rag and dip it in your stain, and just make long strokes. If you make short strokes, it's going to tend to get all clumped up, but if you make long strokes and stretch it all out, make sure you cover your corners if you have a wood like this that has lots of these pop marks in it, if you're going for distress, then you can kind of go back. That's why I like to use the cloth and get in some of those deep spots and then rub it all smooth. So I'll just finish up here, and I'll show you the finished product after one round of stain here. And then once you're done one side, you can just wipe it clean and go to the next. Okay, so now we have all the staining done on all of the legs. This is pretty much how they turned out. You can still see the wood grain, but as you get farther away, it's that dark ebony color. It turned out pretty dark. This is with 3 coats of ebony stain, so there you can kind of see it. So I've let it dry overnight, and I'm going to take this wipe on poly, and it's just regular polyurethane that you can wipe on. Just take a clean dry rag, and you can just wipe it on. I also finished painting the top of the checkerboard. I painted it blue, I left the black. Simple process, just tape out what you don't want painted, and just throw the paint on. I let that dry overnight. I'm going to put a coat of poly on that as well. With the wipe on poly, you can stick one coat on, and then take a fine grit sandpaper and wipe it and run that down and knock out any high spots. And then you can wipe all the dust off, get it clean, come back on, and stick a second coat on. I already scratched these up on purpose to make them a little more rustic. So I'll probably only do just one coat of poly and just leave it rough. I think it gives it a little more weathered look. It's going to be inside, so it's still going to be protected. So I don't think I need the second coat, and it saves time. So let's get to it. Alright, so the legs are all wiped clean. You just take a clean cloth, put a little bit of polyurethane on it, nothing major, and just like you put the stain on, just make nice big sweeps. I like to go along with the grain, and the nice part about this wipe on is that it's pretty forgiving. You don't have any big streaks as long as you have decent coverage, and you wipe off any excess. It's pretty forgiving, and it's a lot easier to work with than some other polyurethanes that you're going to brush on. What I like to do is normally do the edges first, and then wipe on this big section, and I'll leave the bottom section here, and I'll come back once this top is dry.